salutations, one and all. Those of you who are regular viewers of Geeks Assembled know me as Harry. You also know me as the Doctor Who Librarian. Well, for those of you who are tuning in, you're about to get a treat. The first up to 7 sessions showing off my library of Doctor Who books. So we'll start off with the very beginning. An Unearthly Child. Terrence Dick's novelization. One of the first books I added to my collection. Added in 83 from a little bookstore that was nearby where I lived at the time. You want to read, I know people love their DVDs, but you want to get a taste of what the books are like? Doesn't hurt to go to Terrence Dick's novelization. Second book on the list, one of the original books that was done years ago, The Daleks, David Whitaker. You'll notice it is entitled Doctor Who and the Daleks because when these books, or first 3 books came out, they were as kids' books, and they did the title as such, Doctor Who and blank. So that's why you see with this compared to Unearthly Child, the intro is so much different. Third book in the series, done by Nigel Robinson, is none other than Edge of Destruction. Very good book, in my opinion. It gives you an inside look into the TARDIS. The fourth book is one of the 2 that I have hardbacks of as well, Marco Polo. Number 1 on my list of stories I want recovered. I'm a history buff, so what can I say? Marco Polo's high up on the list of stories I want back in the archives. Next one, done by a man who, if you're a fan of the show, you'll know the name, Philip Hinchcliffe. His adaptation of the story, The Keys of Marinus. Not a bad adaptation, not bad at all. Next one up, the second story by John Lucarte. You know him from Marco Polo. Now you're getting one of the 3 stories that he did that is complete in the BBC archives, The Aztecs. Nigel Robinson scores again. This time, doing a novelization of The Sensorites. Original author has passed away, so Nigel took up the task. In fact, one thing you'll see as you go through the books is that Terrence Dick, while he did a lot of them, towards the end of the series on television, is basically him and Ian Marter when they could not get one of the original authors to do the books. So that's why you'll see certain authors' names repeated time and again. And speaking of Ian Marter, his book, adaptation of The Reign of Terror, a story about the time of the French Revolution and such. That ends season 1. Season 2 begins. Terrence Dick, Planet of the Giants. Not a bad story, but the books, I hate to say it, but the book is better than the TV series episodes. TV stuff just put me to sleep, I'm sorry to say. Next up, another Terrence Dick book. This time, the Daleks are back. Dalek Invasion of Earth. Terrence Dick did a smash-up job on this one. Next up, Ian Marter again. This time, The Rescue, the story that introduced Vicky to the show. Not a bad novelization, not a bad adaptation at all. Next, Donald Cotton, with his book, his adaptation of his own book story, The Romans. Not a bad story, if you like a little comedy thrown in there. Next up, the second of the original stories, the original 3 done, The Zarbi. This is one that was very expensive to do as a story. They did okay with the novelization, but you got to remember, you'll see a lot, if you get the book, you'll see a lot of italicized stuff, such as referring to the Doctor as Doctor Who, the TARDIS is in italics. It's just, TARDIS is in italics, it's just a whole different ball game with the early ones. The third of the early ones. Number 2 on my recovery list, The Crusades. Very well done. I gotta admit, I would, as I said this before, I'm a history buff. I'd love to get this one back in the archives. Next up, Clint Jones, adaptation of his own novelization, his own story, The Space Museum. Not bad, but the book doesn't work as well as the TV episode did. Next is a book by an author I actually have on Facebook as a friend, John Peele's The Chase. This is one of several books that Peele has done over the years. He's done this one. He did one story that broke up into 2 books as well for Hartnell, and he also did 2 Troutman stories as well in book form. We'll get to those when we get to the Troutman material. Chase is well done. Wholeheartedly recommend you getting it if you can for your library. Last one for season 2, Time Meddler. This is the first story that gives you a look at another of the Doctor's people, although we don't know that it's a Time Lord this time. Time Lord's not even mentioned at this point, just known as a member of the Doctor's race. Season 3 started with a story that right now is, except for one episode, is pretty much incomplete in the archives, Galaxy 4. I've yet to see that episode. I've heard about it, not seen it. Don't have the special edition Aztec DVD to watch it. Next up, another story that's missing in the archives to complete in its entirety. Another common comedic story of sorts, The Mythmakers by Donald Cotton. Now we get to the 2-in-1. We have the story known simply as The Dalek Master Plan. 2 books by John Peele. Well done. We have 3 episodes from the actual Dalek Master Plan. It just came out recently. Recon of the episode that had none of the Doctor or his companions in it, Mission to the Unknown, is available on YouTube if you want to look at that. Very well done, Recon. Wholeheartedly recommend it. Next up, another story that's missing entirely in the archives. John Le Carte's The Massacre. This story is interesting because Hartnell is in a double role in this one. Not just the Doctor, but as another character in the story itself. And he's basically plays the 2 characters. You don't even see them meeting until toward the end of the story. Next up, Paul Erickson's adaptation of novelization of his own book, his own story, The Ark. This one is complete in the archives. I've got it on DVD. It's not a bad story. You get a chance to read it. Another one's up. We got 1 episode of this in the archives, Celestial Toymaker. If you're a fan of Batman, the movies that came out in the 80s and 90s, Michael Gough, who played Alfred, was in this. He was the Toymaker. Next up for this season, as we're getting to the end of the season, we have The Gunfighters. Again, Cotton. Comedy. Doesn't work too well here in the States because basically it's like you're taking a spoof of the Westerns, and American fans know Westerns all too well. Next up, Ian Stewart Black, doing his own novelization of his own story, The Savages. Entire story is missing in its entirety in the archives, so this is the only thing we've got outside of some clips from it. Next one, Black again. This time, story is complete in the archives, The War Machines. Interesting little tidbit about this one, the Doctor is referred to as Doctor Who in this story. That completes the 3rd season. Now we get the last 2 stories for Hartnell. Well, Terrence Dix Strikes Again, a story called The Smugglers. Unfortunately, Smugglers is missing in its entirety, so we got nothing but the book to work off of. Last but not least, the first regeneration story, 10th Planet. Story is virtually complete in the archives. I've got the DVD. Jerry Davis did a very good job of doing this one. So that completes Hartnell. For Troughton, oh, do we have books? Oh, do we have books for Troughton? Just pulled a few of them right now. Starting off again with John Peel. Adaptation of the first Troughton story, Power of the Daleks. Then we have Highlander. There's Jamie McCrimmon's first story. After Highlanders, we got the Underwater Menace. Not a bad story, but could be better. Cybermen is basically the title of the book. Half of it's in the archives, the other half has been done by a computer-generated animation. This story is better known to fans as the Moon Base. Trouble was that a lot of these early stories, they would change the names because they felt that changing the name would give better appeal to the audience. Next up, Macroterror, Ian Stewart Black again. There's recons out there. There's tidbits of it out there. It's supposed to be already out in DVD in the UK. Should be arriving in the States before long. Faithless Ones. This is originally a Malcolm Hulk story, but done by Terrence Dicks. This was the policy at the time when, especially for Dicks, if you couldn't get Malcolm Hulk, because Malcolm Hulk was dead at the time, let Terrence Dicks do it. Supposedly this story is due out next for Troughton adaptation. Next, finishing up fourth season, another John Peel book, Evil of the Daleks. Also, very high on my list of stories I want back in the archives. Number 4 on my list, only behind the Dalek Master Plan. Season 5, we start off with Jerry Davis again. We've got Tomb of the Cybermen, considered a classic. Get the DVD, get the book if you can. It's well worth reading. Then Terrence Dicks strikes again. This time, story is pretty much missing in its entirety. Abominable Snowmen. Very good book. Read it if you can find it. Then we go Brian Hales, introducing one of the monsters that he created. In fact, his monsters and 2 other stories he did, all tying together, the Ice Warriors. Next up, adaptation of a story that is now complete in the archives, The Enemy of the World, Pat Troughton in a double role. Then we have Web of Fear. This one is complete in the archives. Don't hesitate to read the book, goes along very well. Next, Fury from the Deep. I want this story badly. I've heard the audio. The only clip that survived is in this final Troughton story, The War Games. That's when the TARDIS materializes as it's landing in the ocean. Final story for the 5th season, Wheel in Space. I'm fortunate to have this copy of the novelization. They had a fire at the warehouse was supposed to be shipped from. Many copies never got out. So I'm fortunate to have this one. Give me a second, I'll grab the last of the Troughton stuff and we'll have those as well. Finish up Troughton now. We start off with The Dominators. Not a bad book by Ian Marter, but could be better. The story itself could be better. Originally supposed to have been 6, got chopped to 5. And it just didn't play well. Next up is The Mind Robber. This is where the missing episode from the episode that was chopped off of Dominators was added on. Very short episodes in the story. Again, next up, Ian Marter. This is The Invasion. 2 episodes completed on DVD by computer-generated material. Rest is in the archives. Very good story. This is the prelude to the Pertwee era and unit with the Doctor being based on Earth. Get the book. It's well worth reading. Terrence 6 strikes again, this time with the very first book story done by Robert Holmes, Crotons. Not a bad story, but I said Holmes improved on his writing significantly as time went on. Then we have Seeds of Death. Originally written by Brian Holmes, significantly rewritten by Terrence Dicks, who also did the novelization. Get a chance, if you find them, read it, get it. It's worth reading. Dicks strikes again with Space Pirates. Unfortunately, we only have 1 episode of that in the archives. Not enough to really say anything, but if you want to find out what the story's about, try and find the book. They'll help you out. Last, but not least for Troughton, we have the one, the only, the 10-part story, The War Games. This happened as a 10-parter because 2 stories fell through. Written by Malcolm Hulk, who was originally one of the authors and writers of the story itself. This story is considered a classic because we finally find out that the Doctor is what they call a Time Lord. We finally meet up with his people. This is the end of the Troughton era stories. It's also the end of the Black and White era. So there you have it for Hartnell and Troughton. Instead of giving you some views, you may find some of these books hard to find because they don't really print them. You'll have to go to bookstores and such to try and find them. But you can get them. I've got my books all organized by Doctor and broadcast order. That's how I know where to put my stuff at. Pertwee, I said, I've got them all. Most of the Pertwee stuff is done by Terrence Dicks, since he was involved as the script editor at the time of the show. So you'll find that most of them, Pertwee stuff is done by Terrence Dicks. There's a few by Malcolm Hulk. There's one actually done by Barry Letts, who was actually the producer of the show at the time. So
can we do those? Can we do those in another video? Harry, can we do those in another video?
Sure, we can do Pertwee in another video. No problem. I'm just trying to get some people